the Tuesday, July 16th Plan Commission. Roll call, please.
Banks? Here. Caprellian?
Here.
Rosendich?
Here.
Wood?
Here.
Mayor McManus?
Here.
Hendler and Pinker are absent.
All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 18th, 2019? Motion by Mr. Wood, second by Mrs. Banks. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Citizen comments. Any citizen comments? Anybody wishing to address the Planning Commission? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll go to item 5, the Campus Master Plan.
Don't read.
Don't read the whole thing?
You don't need to read all the
parcels. All right, so the Campus Master Plan by the Marshfield Clinic Health Systems, presented by Bryce Hembrick, City Planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So in October of 2016, the Plan Commission and Common Council approved a conditional use for the Marshfield Clinic for the hyperbaric expansion to the existing East Wing facility. As one of the conditions for this, a campus master plan was required. In October of 2017 and also October of 2018, the clinic requested an extension of the deadline to submit the campus master plan. So we are here today to talk about the campus master plan that was submitted on May 31st. This plan is essentially an overview of the existing facilities on the site, and as well as a guide for the future over the next 10 years. This plan has met the requirements outlined in the zoning code, and with us today we have Jim Lynn from Marshfield Clinic Health System, as well as AECOM consultants, Matt Sanders and Shannon Banbury. And so I would like to introduce Jim Lynn to the podium to kind of give an overview of the project, or the plan, sorry.
Thank you, Bryce. My name is Jim Lynn. I'm the Vice President of Facilities for Marshfield Clinic Health System. And as Bryce indicated, this master plan was requested by the city as a condition of approval of our hyperbaric project that was completed, I think about 18 months ago, something like that. And the master plan was, we hired AECOM to help us with the master plan. They're a very large architectural and engineering firm. They have a worldwide presence, and they also have a very strong healthcare background. So that's one of the reasons they were selected to help us with this effort. So the master plan has been in development for well over a year, and Shannon Banbury will be the lead to present this to the Planning Commission and the public today. And Dan Kirshnick, Mike Olson, and myself are all with Marshfield Clinic Health System. And we welcome questions after the presentation. And so we'll just be in the audience waiting for your question. Thank you very much.
Like Jim said, AECOM came on board, I think, a little over a year ago, in addition to the fact that it was a requirement of the city and ongoing projects at Marshfield. The timing coincided with the acquisition of St. Joseph Hospital. And so internally, beyond the city requirements, it was really a perfect timing for Marshfield to take a very close look at all of their existing facilities in combination with their acquisition of St. Joseph's Hospital on how best to utilize their existing facilities. As a part of that, they underwent a facilities condition assessment of St. Joe's as a part of the purchase agreement, and that gave them a good foundation of understanding, a very current understanding of all of the available space, the condition of the different buildings, both from a physical standpoint, exterior shell, the mechanical systems, as well as the clinical operation of those areas. The graphic on the title sheet illustrates In beige, St. Joseph Hospital facilities, and in green is the Marshfield clinics. So part of our charge was understanding all of that and moving forward with a vision for the future, 5-10 years out. How do we optimize the existing facilities to meet both today and future needs? And I think, Bryce, if I can get your help moving forward, as the clicker isn't going. So here's just some of the factors in play there. Again, the physical condition of the campus itself, examining clinical services and support systems, as well as looking to modernize some of their existing facilities, plan for growth, and the potential to better establish centers of excellence in the patient experience, and that would be for women's and children's, and as we'll see in a little bit, opportunities for oncology or orthopedics. Go ahead. This diagram illustrates a little differently the campus. The orange or yellowish colors, those are facilities and buildings on campus that meet hospital type requirements for the building code and life safety codes. The blue are the clinical outpatient kinds of areas, and so there's a little bit of a mix here of previously Marshfield clinic facilities. On the very right is the east wing that was built 8 years ago or so, in addition to the St. Joseph's. Go ahead. We'll go through a series of these sort of aerial massing diagrams to illustrate some of the existing conditions quickly. You can go to the next slide. There's a lot of information on the different types of buildings. They'll relate to some of the specific graphics that were included in the formal submittal. But a lot of the white that's on kind of the upper left tier is the Marshfield clinics in that east building. The lower right side in the gray is a lot of the St. Joseph Hospital. Go ahead. And really what out of that process for the master planning came about was a focus on utilization, better utilization of available space, more efficiently using that available space, and a priority on renewal or regeneration on campus as opposed to large-scale expansions or building a new campus in a different location. How do we utilize our available resources? This slide adds a little bit more detail. We'll go through a couple of these steps as we keep going, but that campus master planning effort identifies a series of projects, potential projects over the next 10 years. The formal submittal focuses on 5-year and talks about a 5-year sort of revisiting of where the campus master plan sits, but from Marshfield's standpoint, they're looking further out than just that 5 years. Go ahead. The first anticipated phase is a connector or skyway, and this is a direct response to the St. Joseph's acquisition, and it allows them to connect both sides of the campus that are hospital-grade facilities without going through the middle portion of the campus, which is clinical. And from a code and life safety standpoint, that's a very important piece because you're not allowed to take somebody that's an inpatient or admitted to the hospital through what effectively is a general clinic area. Next slide. Phase 2 anticipated in green. That's currently an existing building that would get reutilized and renovated to house a consolidation of their administrative areas and executive teams potentially. But that move takes a number of those kinds of spaces and programs out of hospital area that could be used for patient care and puts them in a more efficient use of space as well as a more collaborative environment. Go ahead. The east building also would have some renovation. Currently, it's built to meet hospital standards. It's not being utilized as such right now. The connector will allow that to happen. But also the current thinking is to renovate 1.5 floors for patient use and be configured as a center of excellence for oncology and orthopedics. Next slide. As a part of that, there's a potential expansion to that building if necessary to support those needs, and that would be outpatient specialty clinics, again, to specifically support oncology and orthopedics. Next slide. Phase 3 would offer in purple on the right-hand side, that's an existing west building that would be remodeled to better support women's and children's, pediatrics, birth center, as well as corresponding specialty clinics for that. A big piece of that and the ongoing renewal really focuses on modernization to current best practices, and a key piece of that is, as an example, the size of the patient room in the birthing center. The existing rooms are undersized by today's standard, and we would remodel to meet those needs. On the left-hand side, the Russell Lewis building potentially would get renovated to support the behavioral health. Next slide. And here, phase 4 lists the North Tower. That is a focus on basically modernizing the existing patient tower. Again, a lot of the existing rooms are undersized by today's standards. Some of them don't all have private bathrooms, or they're converted from double occupancy rooms to private rooms. So that would be an effort to upgrade all of the patient rooms in that tower. Next slide. And ultimately, beyond those specifically identified, there's a series of other projects, other phases that would come online in reaction to what's anticipated today, as well as understanding that being flexible to react to where the changing service needs are, changing demographics in the area, those kinds of things. That, again, the focus is on regenerating and utilization of existing facilities as opposed to large-scale expansions. All of this identifies just a few minor building additions, and those are as necessary to allow some of the moving pieces to be remodeled or recreated on site rather than a need for growth of square footage on campus. Next slide. We can skip this one. That is the main driver from the design and architecture facilities utilization. With that understanding, then we looked very specifically at the specific city zoning requirements, both from the campus development boundary, campus inventories, and allowable land use, setbacks, parking requirements, of that information, which was all spelled out in great detail in the submittal packet. We've got some summary information here. We click through these. On the left is the current zoning map. On the right-hand side, more detailed definition of the existing boundary. The blue and purple are, purple is the central district, and the blue is the peripheral portion of the campus. Marshfield owns a number of properties along the perimeter. We've outlined the potential for that in the future that may be included in the boundary, but the boundary itself is what governs all the specifics in terms of building height, density, setbacks, those kinds of requirements as laid out for this specific condition as opposed to a general zoning requirement. Next slide. This may be a little difficult to read at this scale. On the left is the existing campus with a series, all the buildings are labeled, they correspond to spreadsheets in the submittal. The right side's a little larger scale, zoomed in a little bit, but you can see there's 3 small red blocks. Those represent in the anticipated 10-year master plan. Those represent the building expansion on campus. Everything else would be focused on renovation of existing space. Next slide. I won't spend any time on this, but high level is there's approximately 600,000 square feet of building footprint on campus and just over 2 million square feet of actual square footage when you count all the floors of the existing facility. The next slide highlights the potential expansion and reutilization. The footprint barely goes up by about 60,000 square feet total. And corresponding for the gross square footage, it's also basically no more than a 10% anticipated growth. These are slides that incorporate the designated setback requirements and some of the density aspects that would govern within the district. On the right-hand side, there's a supplemental information. The blue highlighted areas are all streets that have been designated major streets by the city and zoning, and they carry a requirement for a 50-foot setback, which is not inconsistent with what we would anticipate in terms of the institutional kinds of buildings and campus structures. For the most part, the existing campus respects those, even though that designation in many cases came after a number of these buildings were built. But in all the cases with our planning, any of the expansions would be in line with, at, or set further back than the existing buildings that they would be expanding. Next slide. A whole bunch of possibilities for what's technically allowable here. That's more just city requirement kinds of things. Going. Part of that analysis is also representative of the parking conditions. In general, Marshfield Medical Center has an abundance of available on-street parking or on-campus parking. Certainly there's a priority to have more parking available closer to some of the service centers. But in our analysis overall, there's quite a bit of additional parking available on site. This is an illustration of all the existing parking lot configurations. The next slides show the data that goes with that. The next slide after that incorporates the anticipated alterations to some of those available lots because of building growth or other renovation on site. But even after our anticipated growth and regeneration, we're showing a net surplus of over 600 stalls on campus. These slides have to do with the overall kind of site plan of the campus as well as landscape requirements. We haven't illustrated specifically the individual projects as a part of this submission because that's down the line in the future. But it's worth noting that even prior to this submission, previous recent projects have all incorporated and met both landscape requirements and zoning requirements on that standpoint, as well as the next slide, which I think illustrates the stormwater management issues. And so it's acknowledged that as any of these specific projects come up and are designed and implemented, that all of those existing requirements would be incorporated and met at that time. That, our formal presentation is done, but certainly if you have questions or comments.
So I guess with that, we can do the questions or comments after they make a motion. So with that, staff recommends to approve the campus master plan request by the Marshfield Clinic Health System, represented by AECOM, to adopt a 5-year campus master plan that describes the existing conditions and future plan developments for the campus, and to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for Common Council consideration. Staff also recommends to approve the campus master plan with the following conditions. Number 1, the campus master plan expires on August 1st, 2029. So we're recommending to make it a 10-year plan. An update to the progress of the plan shall be given to the Plan Commission by August of 2024. If the Plan Commission determines that the plan or vision has changed significantly, the Plan Commission may require an update to the plan in 2024. Number 3, new developments in the campus shall adhere to the landscaping requirements for the CMU Community Mixed Use District. This language shall be added to the final draft of this plan. And then number 4, a master sign plan shall be submitted prior to the installation of any new signs on campus, but not including a face change.
Thank you. This item does require a public hearing. At this time, I'll open the floor to members of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this campus master plan request. Does anyone from the public wish to address the Planning Commission? Second call. Final call. Anyone wish to address the commission? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. We'll entertain a motion to approve. A motion by Mrs. Banks, second by Mr. Rosendich. Discussion. Can I just ask you 2 questions before we go on? When do you suppose the Skyway in phase 1, when do you see that getting underway? Actually, if you could go there, because there's people watching that. I'm sorry to do that.
Yes, we have selected an architect to design that Skyway for us. We've selected HGA Architects out of Minneapolis to be the architect of record, and they're anticipated to be in the design process for approximately 6 months, and we anticipate construction starting in the spring 2020 and have the project complete by spring of 2021.
Okay. And then, boy, that's pretty quick. And then the parking that you brought up right now at the clinic, it's people come from all over. I mean, people literally come from all over, as you well know. Is there anything going to be done for a little bit more parking that front, or a tram or something that can help? Because there's a lot of handicap spots, which is great. But there are a lot of people that have to walk up that whole way.
Well, we currently operate a shuttle that's available to patients and visitors, and it's operated by our security department. We are always interested in receiving comments about how to improve our shuttle service, but we understand that a lot of our lots, if you were to walk from remote parts of the lot back to the building, that's a long walk, so that's why we have shuttles. And if there's opportunities to improve the shuttle service, we're interested in receiving those kinds of comments and responding to it.
Okay. Anything from the commission?
And Mr. Pinker actually sent me some comments that to go over, basically from him. He spoke with Jim Lynn about the project, and so he felt good about the plan, but he just wanted me to note a couple things. He wanted to reiterate his past concerns about the delays associated with the project. He he did say that they were meeting most of the requirements, which is good, and that he acknowledged that, you know, the campus is such a large part of this city, and that careful consideration should be, you know, it should be in careful consideration as to the projects of the plan or of the campus. He did mention that the Marshfield Clinic Health System is the largest generator of local and transient traffic in the area, and that it was that the transportation demand management section was recognized and acknowledged, and he didn't feel that it needed to be a requirement because the Plan Commission or Common Council could require them to do a transportation demand management plan. And then just to wrap up, he said, that being noted, is there an obligation beyond the public hearing to communicate with neighbors? I'm concerned that there is no reference to efforts at neighborhood communication. This was a point that was raised during the consideration of the campus master plan for Marshfield High School. We should also recognize that the campus does constitute a city within a city. In fact, the campus is actually larger than a noteworthy city-state, Vatican City, by 31.62 acres. As the city of Marshfield has found, communication is vital to public relations and understanding. If I were able to attend this meeting, I would vote to approve the campus master plan. The final completed project shows a forward-thinking and dynamic action plan. So those were the comments from Mr. Pinker.
Thank you. Anything further from the commission? Seeing none, then please, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much for that. Item 6, conditional use request by Rems Funeral Home to allow for a non-residential group development for the construction of a second building on site, exceptions to parking requirements and exceptions to landscaping requirements, located at 300 South Oak Avenue, parcel 33-03309B, zone CMU, commercial mixed use. Presenter Evan Monson, associate planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you just stated, this is a group development for a non-residential project. There'd be 2 principal buildings on the site instead of the one that's existing. As a result of that, it has to get a CUP approval as a group development. As you can tell by this location map, it's not really any sort of normal geometric shape that you'd ever contrive of normally, so they're also looking for some other additional exceptions, notably to landscaping and parking requirements. I'm going to go to the next slide here. This is a plan of the building that they're proposing to add. It would be approximately 4,800 square feet in size. This could be used in conjunction with the funeral services offered at REMS currently, or as a standalone structure in of itself to be used as a gathering space for private events and other. Go to the next slide. This is the latest site plan that they have submitted for review. Note, this is actually different than the one that was in the packet. So this one's going to be a little bit different in terms of what we go over for this one, but notably the setbacks are meeting for this one. There's a little bit of a different change in the parking layout. I want to go to the next slide. A little bit of background info on this piece of property and the project. Originally, it was 2 separate parcels. The city used to own it. It was a vacant green space. It was then sold to REMS. They combined it in 2018, I believe. They're now looking to develop on the vacant portion of the lot, which is the northern portion of it. If it was 2 separate parcels, there was no utilities available to the separate portion. A lot of major work would have to be done to actually put utilities into there. You'd also have to look at adding another access. As a result of that, we were looking to do a group development and just keep it all in one lot and then utilize the existing utilities on the site as well as the already existing access drives coming off of Oak Avenue. Go to the next slide. Again, the site plan that we showed a couple of slides before was a little bit different than the one that was included in the packet. Based off of this current latest site plan, the setbacks are meeting the zoning code requirements. Also, pavement and buffer yard setbacks are also being met. I believe they're also being met in some of the other ones as well. So you guys were squinting hard enough and wondering if they're meeting or not. They were. Parking requirements normally would require 1 space per 3 patrons at maximum capacity. The land use for the funeral home is small scale indoor institutional. We consider the new building the same land use as well. That's where that little formula comes into play. Given the capacity of 160 patrons at max capacity in this new building, The stalls required would be 53 by code. The latest site plan shows 33 new stalls being shown. Existing, there was about 60 stalls on site, so that would bring the total up to 91 stalls. I believe a couple were removed to make sure there was proper flow of traffic on the property, but Plan Commission can grant exception to allow for parking requirements to be reduced from 53 stalls. If you guys determine it's reasonable to keep what's provided as shown, you may as well approve that as well. Lately, we've been working a lot with the fire department to alleviate a lot of the concerns with some different fire code requirements. Obviously, if you get a fire truck in there, that's quite a bit bigger than a normal vehicle, so there's some different moving and push-pull that we've had to work with to make sure everything can fit in this little odd-looking site. But we want to go to the next slide. Landscaping is required for new development in the city. That includes street frontage, landscaping, parking, and then buffer yard requirements. Due to the space constraints of the property, it's hard enough getting parking on there, and then to throw everything else on there is a little bit trickier than normal. The applicants are requesting some exceptions to the normal landscaping requirements. One of the key landscaping features that's required would be a buffer yard, since the zoning of the subject property is CMU, which is more of like a commercial mixed-use district. A lot of the neighboring properties are single-family residential, and so buffer yard will be required along that western portion of the property. The utilities may be moved underground in the future, though, along that said property line. As a result of potentially having to rip up the landscaping as soon as you put it down, staff would recommend some sort of exceptions to that. We would recommend at least plantings and or a solid opaque fencing be installed along the buffer yard between the new development and the neighbors. The other landscaping portions that we would also review are parking and street landscaping. Usually we require parking along the street frontage as well as in the parking area, as well as with the parking islands. As we've already discussed, this lot is oddly shaped, and to add landscaping islands and other landscaping peninsulas would kind of create a little bit of a nightmare for snow removal and as well as getting around the property in general. We would support reducing that requirement to not have the landscaping islands or peninsulas. We would also support not having too much landscaping around the street frontage. Obviously, we want to promote visibility and don't want to make it any more of an issue driving as it is already now on the Oak Avenue. I believe we go to the next slide. We have some of the recommendations of what we would have. We recommend approving the conditional use request by the Rems Funeral Home to allow for the non-residential group development. There's a handful of conditions we would have. Minor site plan adjustments can be administratively approved, provided that there is a minimum setback of 32.5 feet from the property line along Oak Avenue and the new principal structure and any improved conditions are met. Excuse me. The property cannot be split into separate parcels in the future. The new development is required to have a minimum of 40 new parking stalls on site. The buffer yard may be a minimum width of 10 feet with the landscaping, plantings, and or solid opaque fencing to be installed between the newly developed portion of the property and the neighboring properties to the west and the north. And then the final condition, the new development is permitted to provide no street frontage or parking area landscaping. Landscaping totaling 100 points, though, shall be dispersed along the street frontage and or around the new building, provided it does meet the visibility standards of the municipal code.
Thank you. This item does require a public hearing. At this time, I'll open the floor to members of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this request. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this request? Second call. Final call. Anyone from the public wish to address the Commission? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Wood. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Rosendich.
Mr. Mayor, I have some comments once we open it up for discussion from Mr. Banker.
Okay, I do want to, we'll get to those in a second. I do want to make sure that Pete Fletty, the Deputy Chief of the Fire Department, had some initial concerns. And I just want to make sure that all of the concerns from the Fire Department for safety, all of them are completely alleviated.
Sure. So the initial concerns were over access. So once this building is constructed, it's our job to make sure it's protected. So our initial job in this DRT phase is to make sure we have access for our fire vehicles. Initially, when the first few plans came out in the DRT phase, it looked good. Since then, the building kind of changed. I don't know how many drafts this has kind of gone through, but as it sits right now, after all the revisions, and we made a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails back and forth last week and even into this morning, feel comfortable with the access at this point.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? If you want to go ahead with those, that'd be fine.
Bill submitted some comments along with this item as well. He said he had no objection to the conditional use request. It is a continuation of an existing business in an existing location. As previously discussed, the expansion absorbs a property not prone to convenient development. Parking in other cases where on-site parking was limited, notably in the downtown area, has been resolved by similar considerations. As long as the site plan satisfies the objections of the fire department regarding the user and property safety, the safety issues should be resolved. I believe that was all of his comments.
That was all? All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, conditional use request by Jeremy Faber to allow for a group development to construct 4 duplexes, 8 total units located at 3007 West Man Street, parcel 250-2602-253-1016, 3011 West Man Street, parcel 250-2602-253-1015, and parcel 250-2602-253-1014, currently zoned SR4, single-family residential, but soon to be rezoned TR6, two-family residential. Presenter, Evan Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be another group development. This one's residential instead of non-residential. It was recently rezoned, I believe, at the last council meeting to TR6, which is two-family residential. It allows for duplexes, single-family, and a couple other land uses. For this project, it would be 4 duplexes, 2 units in each duplex, so that'd be a total of 8 units. Since there is multiple principal structures on the one property, this was a group development. The 2 narrow lots, right now it's 3 separate parcels. There's 2 narrow ones on the south side and a larger one in the north portion. The large lot off Manville Lane has no utilities. The 2 narrow ones do have utilities, but they're pretty narrow compared to just about any of the other properties in the area. By combining them into one lot, you can utilize the utility access off West Man Street, then develop what is currently 3 unused lots that are not the most desirable or usable currently in their state. This is the location map of the area. As you can tell, Manville Lane is on the north and bounds the north portion. West Manville is on the south. 2 narrow lots are, as you can tell, on the south side, and the other lot's quite large, but really has no sort of access for utilities as of right now. When you combine them, they'll utilize the utilities off of Man Street right now. So go to the next slide. We have a fancy little table that goes over some of the setbacks required in the TR6 zoning district, as well as what's provided in the current site plan. The setbacks are either meeting or exceeding what is required by zoning. I believe the closest one is, it looks like the rear setback is required to be 20 feet and provided is 30. That's probably about as close as it gets to being anywhere closer. In terms of building separation, they're separated by about 15 feet. If you get 10 or less is where you kind of get some of the fire separation for building code standards involved. Pavement setbacks would have to be met at 3 feet. In this case, the private drive along the west side of the property would need to be 3 feet away from that property line. Building coverage of the lot, TR6 lots allowed to have 40% building coverage. This, once combined and having the buildings placed on it, would come out to about 26.4% building coverage. On the bottom of the slide is the site plan. They're kind of all in a row going up and down, north to south. There'd be a private drive along the west side that would run across the lot, and then there'd be driveways connecting to that. The east side would be open yard space where you could put landscaping and other items. So these are some elevations of the buildings that are being proposed. And we're on analysis. This would basically provide about 5 units per acre approximately. It meets the density allowed in the TR6 zoning district as well as what would be promoted in the future land use map of the comprehensive plan for this area. The project meets or exceeds setbacks required within the zoning districts. It would require parkland dedication fees. Since there is a residential component, there are those fees involved. That comes out to $1,600 total. That's basically $200 per each of the units. Staff would require this to be paid prior to actually acquiring the building permit for each one. To aid in providing the privacy along the east side of this property, staff would support adding some landscaping plantings along that side. The neighbors did note it might be in the best interest of the project to have some sort of landscaping added in addition. Normally, there's not any landscaping required for this project, but in this case, it might be better if we do include some landscaping. I'm going to go to the next slide. We would recommend approving this conditional use request for the group development. There's a number of conditions we would have. The first one is that the 3 parcels shall be combined through a certified survey map prior to the issuance of any building permits. The parkland dedication fees for each shall be paid prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, the fee totaling $1,600. The landscape plantings totaling 150 points shall be dispersed along the east side of the property and within 10 feet of the east property line to act as a buffer between the group development and the neighboring properties to the east. The private access drive shall be a minimum of 20 feet wide. Driveways for each building shall be a minimum of 20 feet in length. And then that the final condition is that principal structures are permitted to have a minimum setback of 25 feet from the east property line. I believe Anchor had some comments as well, and he'd say that he had no objection to this request. He does thank Mr. Faber for his efforts to appropriately develop vacant land and to provide additional housing in the community. So.
Thank you. This item does require a public hearing. At this time, I'll open the floor to members of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this request. Is there anyone from the public that would wishes to address the Commission? Second call, anyone from the public? Final call, anyone from the public wish to address the Commission? Seeing none, we will...
we got one.
There's one. Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Jeremy Faber, Faber Construction. The only thing I noticed on the recommendations, I'd like to amend the landscaping part of it. I have no problem with, was it 150 points for landscaping, but the 10 foot, as stuff grows, I think 10 feet from the property line might be a little close. Because there's the east property line right now has adult trees along it, and I'd like to maybe amend that back to like within 20 feet, have landscaping along the east property line. So, other than that, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Evan, can you do that
Yeah, we can.
administratively?
Honestly, if we want to propose an amendment here, we can as well.
There's been a motion.
What's that?
There's not been a motion.
No. All right, so anybody else from the public? Seeing no one else from the public will entertain a motion from the Planning Commission to approve. Motion by Mr. Wood, second by Mrs. Banks. Any discussion? Anybody look to make a motion to...
What's the standard thing we do for this? What's the standard thing we do for this? Do we do 10 feet? Do we do 20 feet? I mean,
Usually we don't require a buffer yard in this case. The 2 zoning districts aren't too terribly different, so there isn't technically a buffer yard required. Most of the time, for a lot of them, it is a minimum of 10 feet. If we were to change it to 15 or 20, it probably wouldn't be too big of an issue. Mainly it's to separate the one development from the other, and so whether that's pretty close to that property line or set back a little bit further back, I guess is up for us to decide. If it were to be planned close to the property line, you would have that instance of where, as the trees do grow up, as they increase in height, they may intertangle and kind of get convoluted with some of the neighboring property landscaping as well. So it may be in the best interest to move it back and make sure that when it does grow to its full potential and not have anything get in the way of it. So.
all right, well, I'll move to change the requirement to landscaping within 20 feet of the property line.
There's a motion to amend to change it within 20 feet. Is there a second to that motion? Mr. Rosendich, any discussion on that amendment? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That part carries 5%. Now we'll go back, or 5-0, sorry. Go back to the main motion, which is to approve the conditional use request. We already have a first and a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0 as well. Item number 8, rezoning request by Wesley United Methodist Church to rezone the property located at 209 South Maple Avenue, parcel 33-00880 from SR6 single family residential to DMU downtown mixed use. Presenter Bryce Hembrook, City Planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So the property located at 209 South Maple Avenue is currently in the process of selling to the Wesley United Methodist Church, and the two lots will combine. The church property to the south, which is the church property, was rezoned to DMU in December of 2018. In order for these lots to combine, they need to be in the same zoning district. According to the City of Marshfield 2017-2037 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map, this property is located in the downtown mixed-use district. Institutional land uses are appropriate and suitable land uses in the downtown area. And the church property that the subject property will be combining with has been in institutional land use in this location for many decades. So there's really nothing new coming into this area. The property to the south and all properties directly to the west west of the subject property are zoned DMU, downtown mixed use, including the downtown public parking lot to the west. The properties directly to the north and east are zoned SR6 single family residential and consist of mainly single family residences. The lot size will meet the minimum lot size and width requirements in the downtown mixed use district. The applicant will need to receive a conditional use permit for exceptions to the front, street side, and side setbacks, as well as a variance for the rear setback. They will also need to receive exceptions to the parking requirements through a conditional use permit. That is in the planning to be reviewed at next month's Planning Commission, and then at the Zoning Board of Appeals, they will be reviewing the variance next month as well in August. This church will more than likely be considered a large-scale indoor institutional land use, and this land use is permitted by right in the downtown mixed-use district. So, for example, a large-scale indoor institutional land use is a large church or community center, which is located in a building that is greater than 10,000 gross square feet in size. And so a large-scale indoor institutional land use is permitted by conditional use in the current zoning district, SR6. So this is also another reason why they want to rezone as well. So here's the location. As I mentioned, it is to the northeast of the where the church was located. And here is a picture of the future land use map plan. As you can see, it's generally surrounded by the downtown mixed use district, and then you have a slight mix of transitional mixed use areas as well as medium density residential areas. And then with that, staff would recommend to approve this rezoning request by Wesley United Methodist Church to rezone the property located at 209 South Maple Avenue from SR6 to SR6 single family residential to DMU downtown mixed use, and to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for common council consideration.
Thank you. This item does require a public hearing. At this time, I'll open the floor to members of the public who would like to address the Planning Commission regarding this rezoning request. Anyone in attendance wish to address the commission? Second call, anyone from the public? Final call, anyone from the public wish to address the commission? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. We'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Wood, Second by Mrs. Banks. Any discussion?
And I have some comments from Mr. Pinker as well. And I'm sorry, I didn't mention right away, he's out with an injury, so that's why he's not in attendance today, and that's why he wanted me to kind of give his feedback. So this is a direct quote from what he provided me. I have praise for the rezoning request from Wesley United Methodist Church. It fits the future land use map. This location is a revitalization area as defined on map 9-3 of the comprehensive plan and will add to revitalization efforts. Though the request is undoubtedly driven by a tragedy, the project at this location is the first urban renewal project to the east of Central Avenue since the construction of the library. This project and the library project are the only urban renewal projects in this area since the construction of Veterans Parkway. The congregation must be recognized for its efforts, and this request deserves approval. So that was from Mr. Pinker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Item 9, update on the implementation committee.
Thanks, Mayor. So a day or two after the last plan commission, the implementation committee got together to finalize going over what's been accomplished so far since the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2017. So we've identified a lot of things. Now, most of those recommendations are ongoing things. So those are things that it's kind of more of a reminder for city staff and commissions to keep in mind over the next 20 years. But in a few months or so, we'll put something together to give you guys an update as to what's been accomplished through the comprehensive plan. With that, we have no meetings planned in the near future, but I would imagine in the next few months we'll have a report for you guys. So, any questions?
Any questions? Nope. All right. Item number 10. Any items for future agendas? None. All right. Number 11. Any staff updates? Nothing, Josh? Nothing. Nothing going on the weekend?
Nothing new happening?
Nothing, no big deals?
I might be getting married this
You might be. You want to narrow down those plans. Sheesh.
If she stays around, we'll be getting married.
There you go. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Capri and second by Mr. Rosendich. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.